Do I have to say it? Trees don't have hands. And I can hear you saying, but that doesn't have anything to do with Genesis 1 because there isn't any figurative language in it. Oh, really? We get our 24-hour day from the rotation of the earth. We know we've made a full rotation when the sun returns to a particular spot in the sky. And especially in ancient times when Genesis was written, the position of the sun in the sky was the only way to tell where you were in the progress of a day, or even that a day had begun or ended. And this is a big problem for the literal 24-hour interpretation. Why? First day, God creates heavens and earth, shapes the earth from a formless blob into a slightly less formless blob, and creates light, thus creating day and night. We have evening and morning, one day. Second and third days we have more creation, more evening and morning, a second day and a third day. Fourth day, God creates the sun, moon, and stars. Wait a minute. No moon or stars or sun until the fourth day? Then how did we get evening and morning on the first 3 days? We already said that a 24-hour day is a single rotation of the earth, and they knew it was a full day when the sun came back. But there was no sun. That means there was no sunrise, hence no morning, and there was no sunset, hence no evening. But the text says we had these things for the first 3 days. How does that work? I hope the answer is pretty plain. We're talking figuratively here. These aren't literal days because there's nothing to measure them by. If you tried to tell Moses, or whoever you think wrote this story, that he was talking about literal 24-hour days, he would have stared at you like your nose was falling off. The first question he would have asked is, what's an hour? That whole method of timekeeping was invented by the Babylonians, and Israel didn't pick it up and start using it until relatively late in their development. If you had asked him what he meant by day, he would have said, I don't know, this is how God described it to me, but I'm really not sure what it all means. Think I'm wrong? The prophets of the Old Testament frequently didn't understand what they were talking about. Ezekiel and his wheels? He had to suspect he'd gotten into some funny mushrooms or something. Ever read Zechariah?
12-foot snakes, magic flutes?
Almost. Do you honestly think Isaiah knew who he was talking about when he sang about the suffering servant in chapter 53? No, he just wrote it, took it to the temple for safekeeping, and left it for us to fight about centuries later. There is no reason to assume that Moses was any different. He might have thought the days were literal because that was the only point of reference he had. Kind of like this.
He said, this is a funny stick. Did it grow on a tree?
The bushman called it a stick because he'd never seen a firearm before, so he called it the nearest thing that he knew how to identify. It's the same way with the ancient writers of the Bible. I mean, come on! If God had told Moses the universe was 15 billion years old, Moses wouldn't even have known how to write that down, because as far as we know, the number billion was way beyond anybody's comprehension. I can just see the conversation.
Okay, in the beginning you created the heavens and the earth. When was that?
Roughly 14 billion years ago.
Roughly 14... What? What kind of years?
14 billion.
What's billion?
1,000 million.
1,000 what?
1,000 million. A billion.
Uh-huh. How do you spell that?
You know what? Leave that part out. It's not important anyway. Let's continue.
Fine by me. So what's next?
What do you know about quantum fluctuations?
Uh-huh. How do you spell that?
Moses had to know there was something a little unusual about the wording of the final product. But he dutifully wrote it down and passed it on to us so we could enjoy the befuddlement for ourselves. The sequence of 6 creative acts becomes the basis for the Hebrews' work week with the Sabbath and all that, and it's in this context that Jesus mentions it in the New Testament. Truth be told, based on what they both said about it, neither Jesus nor Moses considered it a big deal. Maybe we should go and do likewise? Let's wrap this up with a few examples of just how flexible the word day is in Hebrew, with or without a number. Genesis itself uses it in a lot of different ways. Genesis 27:45. Rebekah says, "Why should I lose both of you in one day?" In the context of a literal day, this doesn't make much sense. Check it out. Isaiah 9:14. The Lord will cut off Israel head and tail in one day. Isaiah 10:17 includes the preposition in one day. Revelation 18:8, 10, and 17 use one day and 1 hour synonymously. Not Hebrew, but it shoots down the always a literal day argument nicely. You get the general idea. Here's the point of all this. This subject isn't worth fighting about. I'm an old universe creationist, which is to say, I believe an almighty God created the universe, and based on the science we have, He did it somewhere around 15 billion Earth years ago. He created life, it developed, and He guided it along with a number of creative nudges here and there until it all coalesced into what we see today. When you look at the night sky, if you have really good eyes and good darkness, you might be able to see this. That's a whole separate galaxy that shows up off in the Andromeda constellation. It's called the Andromeda Galaxy, duh. Thing is, when you look at it, you're not seeing it how it is today. You're seeing it how it was 2.5 million years ago. That's how far away it is. It takes the light from that galaxy 2.5 million years to reach our eyes. So, for all we know, the whole galaxy blew up last week, and our great repeat until you run out of breath grandchildren might get to see it, but we sure won't. Now, if you're a young Earth creationist, you have to try to explain that. The usual one is called creation with apparent age, which is to say, creation is a lie. It looks billions of years old, but it really isn't.
Acting! Thank you!
And I have to be brutally honest here, folks. There's no way around this. If the Bible really says the world is less than 10,000 years old, but we're seeing light from millions of years ago and digging up fossils of creatures that we know haven't walked the earth in several million years, then the 10,000 year figure is a lie. Perhaps not deliberate, but it makes the whole thing untrustworthy, because if we still insist God wrote it, then God lied. Are you really prepared to go there? But David, I hear people say, these scientists that say the universe is billions of years old want to cut God out of the process completely and say it all just happened. So what? If that's your hang-up, then direct your ire at the scientists, not the science. The facts are neutral. What we do with them is what counts. If you really want to be taken seriously in today's world, deal with these facts in a productive, open-minded way that recognizes the value of knowledge. In this case, that means understanding that the days in Genesis 1 are anything but literal. They're poetic, figurative comments about how God did His creative activity. They help us understand who God is, how He operates, how He brought about this universe that we live in, and all the rest. And here's the beauty of it. It doesn't matter how long it took or when it happened. It's here. He put it here for us to enjoy and as a testimony to Himself. Let's quit shooting ourselves in the foot over the literal words that aren't literal and just start appreciating what He's given us. And when we do that, we can share it with the folks out there much more effectively because they can tell we've done our homework. People are much more willing to listen if they can see that you know what you're talking about. Even more important, we have got to stop sniping at each other over this. Christians have come up with some really dumb topics to argue about since Jesus left us, but this is one of the dumbest. We all agree that our God created the universe and that after that humans screwed it up. He intervened in human history to fix it. Why isn't that enough? Oh wait, it is. How about we all start acting like it? Thanks for watching. I'm David L. Washburn, and I'll see you next time. For real this time.